Welcome to Growing Home, the podcast that looks at the practices and products to help you take care of the place that means the most to you, your home. I'm your host, Terry Therian. Your co-host, Len Giddix, had a prior commitment today. However, he'll be joining us again on the next episode. To pick up from our last discussion, we focused on the best practices for seeding and overseeding the lawn. However, it left us with a key question. Which grass seed mixture is right for our lawn? So we reached out to the person who is not only a top expert in grass seed development, but whose last name solidifies that this is truly his life's calling, Barry Green. Barry is the president and fifth generation of Jonathan Green, a leading grass seed and lawn care products company. And for today's episode, we're actually on site at Jonathan Green headquarters in Farmingdale, New Jersey, with our special guest, Barry Green. Barry, how are you today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for coming down here, Terry.
Great. Well, thank you again for having us. You mentioned, it's a really busy time of the year, especially working with the side growers. Can you tell us a little bit about, this season for the side growers and what you refer to as a sod rush?
Well, it's been a very busy season. Right now it's been raining an awful lot, and they get their fields prepared, and then they get, 2 or 3 inches of rain, and it washes it out, and so they're a bit stressed, but they're always stressed at this time of the year. I've learned from so many years of calling on sod growers that it makes a big difference in the final stand. It's based on the date they plant. If they plant in the end of August or early September, they are usually going to be able to harvest that grass in 1 year. If they wait and plant at the end of September, early October, then it's going to go into the second year. And they're trying to turn that ground, on an annual basis so they get the money out of the crop. But it's we deal with sod growers all over the United States. It's a big part of our business, not as big as the retail, but it's significant. And I've always loved the sod business because I don't put it this way with a sod grower because you don't want them to think you're testing your product on their ground with their business. But I think of them as giant test plots, hundreds and hundreds of test plots in different areas around the United States, different regions. We'll sell sod growers as far south as Georgia, as far north as Maine, all the way to the West Coast. In Colorado, so high elevation, in Rhode Island, right at sea level. It's a challenge, but we are interested in the end results. We're interested in a product that is going to perform for them and for the homeowner. So we specialize in grasses that are not heavy seeders, that have a deep root system, that knit faster. These are all attributes of the grass that the homeowner will enjoy too. I don't want to get too far afield here for your audience, but people ask me many times, well, Barry, what's the difference between Black Beauty grass seed and other grass seed, or your Blue Panther bluegrasses? What's the difference? Why yours may even cost a few bucks more? Is it worth it? And the answer is very simple, but not generally understood. We breed a vegetative plant that puts its strengths into its roots, not into seed head formation. Varieties that produce a lot of seed on an acre of land are usually of European origin. We call them the heavy seeders. So they may produce 2,500 to 3,000 pounds of seed per acre. When you go to contract with a farmer on the West Coast, you are going to get a lower contracted price because he's got more to sell you. Black Beauty varieties never yield more than 1,500 pounds of seed per acre. They're not great yielders, but they are incredible performers. And that's why they have the very thick, brushy, beautiful look, like bluegrass. It's tall fescue, but it looks like bluegrass to most people. And these varieties perform because they don't put their strength into putting up reproductive tillers. And it's that simple. We pay more for the grass, but it doesn't actually cost more at retail because we don't do two-step distribution. We don't sell to the chains and then mark it up or allow it to be marked up to the independents. We go directly. We are what they call vertically integrated. Our research people work directly with farmers. The farmers sell to Cascade Seed, our West Coast research and production company. We own it, but we buy directly from Cascade Seed, and it goes from us directly to the sod farm. But anyway, the same grass that is used by professional sod growers all over the United States is what is sold in our retail mixes. Think of this. A sod grower is the only professional customer who starts with a blank slate, a bare piece of ground, plants a lawn, and then harvests it or cuts it, lifts it off the ground and moves it. And they do it consistently in a year. So that means it's got to germinate, it's got to fill in, it's got to grow thick, it's got to grow enough root system to cut it and lift it. Now, homeowners, many struggle to grow a good lawn in 10 years of trying. They always have bare spots, weeds, things they can't get rid of. But these grasses perform so well that sod growers are consistently able to harvest their product on time. And that's something that our grasses will do that our competitors won't. The national brand, and there's no use mentioning any names, but they don't sell any sod growers. They don't have a professional division anymore. Almost everybody else that sells at retail does not sell to sod growers because they are interested in things that are cheap to buy, so they're cheap to sell. It's my name on the bag. We're proud of what we do. Jonathan Green was my great-great-grandfather, so we're not going to take any shortcuts. We just want to be proud of what we provide, and the people that really want a good lawn seem very happy with the results, and they stick with us.
Maybe for an intended pun here, you talked about strong roots. Could you take us through your, being the fifth generation in Jonathan Green as a family business, can you take us through the company's history and how it got started?
Well, Jonathan Green, he actually ran what was called a cotton bleach and dye works in the north of England at around the time Abraham Lincoln was president. He was a farmer. What that was back at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, cotton was grown in Georgia, Savannah. Savannah was the port. The cotton was shipped to England, which is where the mills were. This is before they were here too, but that was the center of industry at that point. And the cotton bleach and dye works would take the raw cotton and make it into a textile, and then they would dye it. And Jonathan Green was in charge of one of these plants. But sadly, his wife passed away when he was 40 years old. And Jonathan Green, now, on his own, a widower, he was looking for companionship, I guess, and we know that he started to visit the pubs. Sometimes we think maybe he was there a little too much. So to save himself, he got into the game of what the English call bowling on the green. Italians will call it bocce ball, but it's where you roll a ball on grass to knock down pins, just like bowling in this country, but we do it on a lane. It exists here too, but it was a big sport in England at that time. And Jonathan Green was apparently very good at it, and he wanted to build a better bowling surface. So because they were playing the game in pastures with clumpy grass. So he began to work with the grasses that we know were available at that time, which were ryegrasses and fine fescues. And he did very basic breeding, but he was able to improve those grasses and make a better bowling surface. That was really his contribution to the business. He died in 1917, but his son Charles and his son Jack and my father Barry and me, we've all been involved in the turf business. But in the 20s, Jack came to America. And so there was a bit of a break. It's not exactly the same company. The modern company, the company that sells to retailers, and so was begun in November 1st, 1957. But our history in the business goes back to, we dated from 1881 in that first Bowling Green. Today, the business is run by me. I'm the president of the company. My father's still active. He's 84. We still call on sod farms together. And my brother-in-law is here. He's not in sales, but he's involved in the purchasing. He's a vice president here, very important part of the organization. He's brought some great ideas to the table, like our new soil foods years ago. And that's the family, but it's been a long road. It's been very challenging, but I'll end with this. I brought out a family saga here for you to take with you. It's a pamphlet or a booklet. It's about 30 pages long, actually, on our family history, with pictures that take you through the different generations. But it ends with a statement that Jonathan Green wrote. My grandfather actually had some of his writings, as we know he did. It says, "Look to the future. As an endless dream, a family business goes on. Each new generation setting out, guided by the spirit of the past, dedicated through long days to the success of the enterprise, finally destined to build on foundations laid generations ago." And it's signed Jonathan Green, Seedsman, Duxbury Farm. So all the way back to that time, he believed in family businesses, and that's why we've stuck with independence. We know there's no shortcut to real quality. So it's been an interesting ride, and luckily we're still here to tell the story. They do. I will end with this. They do have a saying in England. I don't think they use it in this country, but the saying is "rags to riches to rags" in 3 generations. And so I guess it. Actually, my daughter was in the business too, and so she would be the 6th. So we've made it twice, the rags to riches to rags story. But anyway, I guess that's enough family history.
So you talked about, the development of seed and everything. Can you tell us a little bit about, Black Beauty and that, you mentioned as, one of your earliest developments as a company?
Well, I can't take complete credit for that, because the beginning of that story starts with a professor at Rutgers University. His name was Dr. Reed Funk, Cyril Reed Funk. He was a genius at breeding. He started as a corn breeder, and of course corn is in the grass family, but he arrived at Rutgers University, I think it was about 1962. My father knew him quite well. As a matter of fact, he moved this business from northern New Jersey to Farmingdale, New Jersey, to be near the Rutgers Research Station at Adelphia, which is just 3 miles down the road here. We were a very small family business, still dealing with sod growers, but we didn't own our own varieties back then. And we needed to. In order to be competitive, you had to be contracting for your own grasses. If you bought grasses from others and contracted them, you didn't have the right price. So my father, who knew Dr. Funk, was always saying, he called him Reed, but Reed, would you help us? Would you give us some material that we can own, that we can take to farmers and get grown? And Dr. Funk told my father, well, what will you do with it? You don't have your own West Coast operation. You don't have your own plant breeders. It's really, you're not going to be successful. So we made that investment. We opened up Cascade Seed in near Salem, Oregon, which is our research and production company. We hired plant breeders, and we went back to him again. And we said we need bluegrass. Everybody was growing bluegrass. That's what we wanted. And he said, you can't afford to wait for bluegrass. It takes 10 years to develop, because bluegrass is an apomictic plant, which means each plant is an identical twin of the one before it. It's not a sexually pollinated variety. It crosses inside itself. And Dr. Funk did something that had never been done before. he was able to breed Kentucky bluegrasses, which they thought was impossible. The name of the scientific term for that breeding is